What do you know? We're still on air. Welcome back to Punchline. As the country awaits the BBI report tonight, we want to take you step by step through the process that may result in far-reaching constitutional changes that will change the face of Kenya. And so joining me now is the chair of the National Assembly's Constitutional Implementation Committee, Jeremiah Kioni, live from Mombasa, and constitutional lawyer James Mamboleo, who has been part of the legal experts for the BBI committee, joins me here in studio. And so welcome to you both, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Honorable Kioni, if you can hear me, I want to start with you. We are at the brink of the legal processes that could lead to the far-reaching constitutional change. And as the chair of Parliament's Constitutional Implementation Committee, what can we expect from the National Assembly standpoint once a final BBI document is made public, possibly this week?
Thank you. I think what we should be expecting from the National Assembly is the passage of the perhaps many legislative or pieces of legislation that will be introduced in Parliament. Being guided by the document that was released to us at Bomas of Kenya, sometimes last year or early this year, if I can remember, we will be expecting quite a number of bills to be introduced through the National Assembly, so that we can actualize the views of Kenyans. When I think the statement that I think could be a telling one is that with our 2010 constitution, we have devolution that deals with resources. We have views that would want to increase the amount of resources that is shared between the national government and the county government by upping the resources that go to the county government. But the other thing, that the aspect that we have always kept lagging behind is devolution of power. We devolved the resources and the chairing and the functions that we give to the county government, but power was left centralized. So I think there is need to look at that. I expect that we'll be looking at that through the BBI. That will call for constitutional amendment so that power is also devolved, and that will give us more stability in the country, less violent electoral process. And I know people are saying that when we talk about BBI, we've forgotten about the youth, the unemployment, and the rest. But let me say this. There is no other better way of helping the unemployed youth other than by passing BBI, because BBI gives us more stability. It allows us to share resources more and also to devolve power. And if we are not competing for power the way we've done since 1992 and perhaps before, it means that we'll be able to grow the economy faster, and the young people will get better employment and quality work. There will be a lot of economic activities that will engage the very big population of the young people. So I believe that BBI is good for us. It is coming. National Assembly will be there to do what is expected of them by the BBI document that will come. But of course, we will also debate and discuss it as it comes.
All right. And of course, there are those who are of a contrary opinion. However, they're not on the program tonight to voice it. But beyond whether BBI is good or not for the country, let me ask you this. There are right now 2 referendum bills in the National Assembly. One that was proposed by you, and the other, I believe, by the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. And it seems like MPs are falling over themselves to get ahead of BBI, or to be the ones, you know, in the know about it. Why 2 bills and not just one before the same house if you're all moving in the same direction?
I think, unfortunately, we have 2 bills, and I say unfortunately because ideally we should have one bill. But let me say that we had a discussion last week with the chairman of JLAC, and we agreed to sit and see how we can harmonize the bill so that we have only one bill before the House. The bill that was done by CIOC is ahead of the park. So ideally, the procedure in Bunge is that, in Parliament, is that the bill that is ahead is informed by the views that others may be having. But we do not want to have any disagreement on how we deal with the referendum. And I want to say that we will sit with the JLAC team, with the JLAC committee, and agree on what is borrowed from which bill, so that we have one harmonized bill that is good for this country.
Right. You just weeks ago, I think 3 weeks ago, made further amendments to the referendum bill to the effect that politicians, including, I suppose, your committee, should not play a role in the drafting of referendum bills, and that should be assigned, rather, to the Kenya Law Reform Commission. Why is that?
No, it is, you see, we have institutions in this country that have specific mandate. And one of the things that we need to recognize is that we have the Kenya Law Reform Commission. And the Kenya Law Reform Commission has the experts, it has the legal team that can always be able to work on any bill that we have. It doesn't have to be the referendum bill, but we would want the Law Reform Commission to play the law they were playing before the death of CIC. Because with their being out of the scene, there is a lacuna that was created that is not very useful when we talk about implementation of the Constitution and also in the enactment of bills outside the referendum bill. Yeah. So I think it is important that we recognize the role of Kenya Law Reform Commission, which we have done in this process, because also when they are dealing with these issues, what I saw during 10th Parliament and thereabout is there is less of thinking that there is some partisan position. It is brought to the floor by professionals, and committees now engage on the content of the bill without quite thinking about who drafted this, what political ideology informed the drafting. When it comes from the Law Reform Commission, I think it is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And we as a committee have engaged the Law Reform Commission even in the drafting of this bill. They have come before us as during public participation, and we have incorporated their views in the bill.
All right.
So it's a good thing, not a bad thing for the country.
Well, that's possibly debatable, and I want to start by asking you, when is the last time you heard of the Law Reform Commission doing anything substantial in law reform? And if they are capable of such, how come they haven't come up with an acceptable bill to settle the gender debate?
One of the things is that all the bills that we have tabled in Parliament, we have always had input from the Kenya Law Reform Commission. And I would want to encourage any other team, that including JLAC and other departmental committees, whenever they have a bill before them, it pays to engage the Kenya Law Reform Commission. They are able to relate that bill with all other bills, that all other acts of Parliament that we have passed. They are able to look at it against the 2010 Constitution that we have. And I want to say again, it is very useful to engage the Kenya Law Reform Commission. Let me say this, and I am not bidding for them. They actually also need to be helped in terms of capacity. The Kenya Law Reform Commission and the AG's office have a key role to play in the enactment of laws in this country. We can only wish them away at our own peril.
All right, fair enough, and I'm also not rooting against them, but here you are proposing on the one hand that they should be engaged in this critical process, which is literally at your doorstep. At least it will be this week if BBI is to be made public. And you're saying at the same time they don't even have the resources. They need to be somehow be given more resources. So number one, it seems to me that they are not prepared for what you're proposing. But furthermore, it could also be argued that it is safer to have the people's elected representatives involved in this process rather than technocrats whose record is questionable. And if the people's representatives are engaged in the process, then isn't it likely that Kenyans would at least feel safer that their voices are at the table, because after all, parliamentarians are beholden to the electorate?
The people's representative will always have a final say in all pieces of legislation that are done by the Kenya Law Reform Commission, done through the AG's office, done through the ministry, or even through BBI. The people's representative will always have a final say. The quality of the bills and the quality of drafting will always be improved when you have institutions like Kenya Road Reform Commission being brought on board. I have no doubt that we also have a legislative, we have a team of legal minds within Parliament who also help in the legislative agenda. But when you are dealing with, it's not that we are saying the people's representative will not have a role to play. But in the preparation of these bills, I think it is important to have that institution play a role. Let me also say this, when we were doing the referendum bill, we had very useful contribution from even the IEBC. And you cannot just do a law without consulting. Public participation means can all the stakeholders, including members of the public who would want to say something, come on board and bring their views. But I want to say again that I was involved in the process of bills, doing bills in 2010, during the 10th Parliament, and I saw the usefulness of Kenya Road Reform Commission, the AG's office, and the CIC now retired or defunct. And I believe in wider consultation, other than thinking that you know it all and you wish others away. I don't see why we should wish Kenya Road Reform away. When I say that they should be added resources, it's just like we are saying the Auditor's General's Office also needs to be given more resources so that they can help us implement this Constitution and achieve the objectives of the Constitution for the better management of our affairs as a country.
All right, let's bring in James Mamboleo. James, sorry, you've been a bit lonesome as we started. He's a constitutional lawyer, and you were one of the legal minds that was tasked with the initial work to decant from the views of Kenyans the kind of changes needed to our systems through BBI. These were constitutional, legislative, policy, and administrative. Well, from the onset, is it clear to you which of these areas is likely to see immediate momentum and why?
Yes, Anne, I'm privileged to have served with many other extremely qualified Kenyans in distilling and collating the views that were presented to the task force for BBI with respect to the many views that they made on the changes they need in this country, both constitutional and legislative, at a policy level and the administrative level. And yes, indeed, there are a number of things. If you look at the 9-point agenda that was presented before BBI, let's say start, for instance, with corruption. You can see already that His Excellency, the President, together with the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, agreed that corruption now should be prosecuted without let or hindrance. Nobody should be protected on the basis of political standing or something like that. And so in the last 2 years or so, you have seen an extremely well-planned attack or offensive against corruption. So that is one of the issues that was brought to the table. The other issue, which I can point out quite easily, is administrative structures in ministries, in county governments, where the public felt that we did not even need to wait for any changes in the law, both at the constitutional and legislative level, and this could be changed. You've seen recently, the President has actually promised to increase the share of revenue to counties by 50 billion. This is one of those things that comes out of the goodwill that has been created by the BBI. Of course, the government is also playing a big role right now in the BBI, or through the BBI process and the recommendations that were made thereunder, to try and improve the business environment, especially for the youth of this country, to enable them to access opportunities in business and entrepreneurship. So I think quite clearly, you can see that there is a raft of measures, both administrative especially and policy, which have been taken into account right now, even without waiting for anything, to ensure that this happens.
Well, let's focus now on the constitutional and legislative areas. And first I want to ask, what constitutional bills do you think we should be expecting in Parliament?
And there are a number of views that came through from Kenyans with respect to an audit that they have done themselves in the last 10 years about how this constitution works. For instance, you've seen that with respect to counties, we have had a big conundrum on the question of how to appoint deputy governors. So we expect very soon to see something in the form of a bill to actually try and remedy a situation of that scenario. We have seen in the last 10 years, especially in the health sector, sector, people coming around with a lot of suggestions on how better we can manage the devolved function of health. There are those who have been suggesting that, for instance, the human resource function in the health docket should be left to an institution that is independent. And for instance, there are some who suggested, especially in the BBI process, that we should get something akin to the National Health Service of the United Kingdom, and they are therefore suggesting that we should get a National Health Commission. You know, so we expect some of these things to come through. For instance, we now know that most county governments are saying they could do better with a lot more resources, and so there has been a suggestion that, for instance, we should get an increase of the allocation to counties or to devolved government from at least 15% to at least 35%. So those, we expect that that's something like that could happen. But there is something extremely important that has been coming all along, especially from county assemblies. County assemblies, for instance, are saying that they would want to see a lot more independence in the operations of county assemblies from county executives. And so some of them are saying that it's extremely important to have their monies sent to them directly so that they are not beholden to governors in the process of executing their functions of oversight against county executives. And so we expect to see a bill, for instance. We expect to see a suggested amendment on a question of giving counties money directly to them instead of county assemblies money directly to them, instead of passing this money through county executives so that then it is transmitted to county assemblies.
All right. What issues then would you say would form the basis of a possible referendum?
Under Article 255 of the Constitution, there is a list of amendments which, if they were to be brought, are supposed to go to a referendum because the Constitution requires that the people must have a say on it. For instance, if you have a proposal on changing the structure of government, if you want to change the term of parliament, if you want to change the Bill of Rights, if you want to change the principles of devolved government, and so on and so forth, then those are issues which parliament or any other institution cannot be able to do without having to take that to a referendum. So since, for instance, remember, Anne, that the BBI process also incorporates, in a sense, a question of integrating this country, creating harmony, unifying this country. And in BBI, there were important issues like questions on divisive elections, inclusivity, and of course, these questions will result in a debate about how best to structure government in order to reflect the will of the people. So there are suggestions, for instance, that we should have a different system of government. For instance, we should incorporate a prime minister in our system of government, probably have a situation in which cabinet secretaries are appointed, half probably from technocrats and half from members of parliament. And this would, of course, entail a change of government. And so on a question such as this, should the bill come eventually for purposes of changing the structure of government, definitely this is one question that has to be taken to a referendum to the people. All
right, Honorable Kioni, to the politics of it, Parliament is due to go for recess. And here, from your perspective, what kind of time frames are we looking at for the National Assembly's possible engagement on this by way of bills? Should we expect anything before December, or is this a 2021 agenda?
I believe that the bills that my colleague has mentioned about could easily find their way into the House before the end of this year. When he talks about referendum, certainly passing the referendum law and preparing the country for referendum, that is a 2021 exercise. It cannot happen 2022. But it's good to say that time is of essence. It will be important to carry out some of these exercises a little bit ahead before we are in full throttle for the campaigns. You can already see that this whole process, which I think is very important, is being carried, it's really becoming a 2023 campaign item. And it would have been useful if we could be able to deal with it outside the 2023 campaigns, because then that way we become more objective and we're able to discuss issues as opposed to personalizing them to the point where we think they are favoring one person as opposed to the other. So I think in terms of timing, we need to move faster. I certainly hope that we can get the BBI in the coming days so that the various bills, and again, let me say this so that people can understand that we expect all committees in Parliament to be involved in managing or processing bills because they relate to different aspects of our governance system in our country. It's not just the CIOC. CIOC may be involved if there are any constitutional amendment issues that come, and I say maybe, but it's the whole National Assembly and also the Senate that needs to come on board. And I think the spirit within the two institutions is one that would enable the passage of those instruments.
Right, and you mean 2022 election, I'm sure. You kept saying 2023, I think you mean 2022. Having said that, you've talked about a spirit in the House that is for perhaps moving these issues along. And I just want to ask you now, as a politician, not as a chair of a committee, what is the likelihood that these constitutional bills will come to a House that can guarantee that at least two-thirds majority vote for them to pass? Are you certain that you have the numbers to drive through these issues in a very uncertain political environment?
The good thing is that if in the event that Parliament is also not able to garner two-thirds, the number two-thirds, you can choose to take it through the popular initiative in the event that we suspect that these initiatives could be, mismanaged for lack of, not really mismanaged, may not see the light of day within Parliament. And I think we hope that we can be able to persuade our colleagues. Two-thirds is not an easy thing to achieve within Parliament, but we hope to persuade our colleagues when that time comes. But in the event that that looks difficult, then I think the powers that be can easily use the popular initiative to try and achieve the same. Through the popular initiative, you don't need the two-thirds within Parliament. Right. You can easily manage it within Parliament.
And yet it appears that the Deputy President is prepared to, if you like, for lack of a better term, fight on all fronts. He has been out politicking for several months now, including today and this last week in Nyamira, where he gave the strongest indication yet that he is against the BBI. I believe in Nyamira saying something to the effect of that he believes in a bottom-up approach rather than an approach that seems to prefer politicians top down in order to change the country. So you have a fairly strong challenger already, even on the ground. What confidence then do you have that if it was to go out to a plebiscite, that it would be any better than in the House?
One of the things that, one is that I don't think we are up against the Deputy President. I think the thing is that when the bill, when the document is out and we then can be able to see what is it that it contains, we should be able to tell Kenyans, to convince Kenyans on the basis of the content of the bill. For now, it is just saying when it comes defeated. I believe that that may have been the case a couple of years ago, but today Kenyans may want to know what is this that they want to throw away. And I think in any case, if again we go by the fact that we seem to have all accepted the document that we were given at the Bomas of Kenya some times back, and what is coming after that are bills to, in line with the principles that are contained in that document, and we had already accepted that document as a good document. I see as being able to persuade many when the final documents are allowed. Because this whole thing is good for our country. It is good for those who are a little bit suspicious now, and certainly useful for those who are younger, because it's them who will benefit more from it.
Right. James, let me bring you in as an observer of politics and also a man of law. You know full well that this document is in many ways President Kenyatta's legacy. He has repeatedly said that his intention is to unite the country, and that's what he wants to be remembered for. Yet at the same time, the very initiative that he wants to unite the country is beginning to be seen as one of the more recent, most divisive initiatives, perhaps not necessarily because of the document itself, but the political interpretation that has been added to it. Is there a way out for the president on that one? How can he persuade the public that the intentions behind not just BBI, but really the handshake that birthed it, are genuine, are positive, as Honorable Kioni is talking about, in an environment where there are concerns now about the clamp down on the freedom of speech and association?
Three ways. One of them is this. If the president were to take this country down memory lane, they would remember, every Kenyan will quickly remember that since 1992, at every election cycle, we undergo the following stages. Just before the election, there's a lot of fear. And then in the middle or during the election, there's a lot of tension. And then after the election, there's always violence. Now, it doesn't need anybody a lot of training to know that we, as a country, definitely need a solution for this kind of scenario. And so therefore, I think what the president is doing is learning from this history. He has decided that he is going to engage the country in a process in which we will audit the entire legal system of this country and provide a long-lasting solution to the problems that visit upon us every election cycle. And so, under Article 132, and the president has a responsibility to ensure that Kenya is a cohesive nation. And we have identified that every elections cause a lot of division, ethnic animosity, ethnic antagonism and polarization, and it is extremely important that we create a systematic method for purposes of solving this issue. BBI may not be a scientific, precise instrument for dealing with some of these issues, but I think so far it has been one of the best in terms of creating a consultative environment that involves public participation, in which Kenyans speak for themselves about really what changes they want in the Constitution. So, regardless of the politics of the day, once this document is out, and it's going to have big proposals for every section of the Kenyan population. It has a big proposal for the youth. It has a big proposal for women. It has a big proposal for politicians. It in a way, comes with a huge omnibus provision on various issues that this country is extremely keen about for purposes of bettering the lives of this nation, of the members of this nation. So, if the president puts his mind and effort behind this process, we expect that in the coming days, when Kenyans see the documents and the contents of the document, each of them will have a buy-in in a certain section of that document. And you know, it had kicked out extremely well just before the pandemic set in. So once this comes, believe me, and the correct communication strategy is employed in devolving the contents of BBI to the Mwananchi out there, I believe that every Kenyan is definitely going to find a stake in that particular document, and it is not going to require a lot of convincing for people to rally around BBI when that comes. However, we must be aware, of course, that politics is going to play a role. There are those in the political scene who have now seen certain opportunities in this document. There are those who think that this document is being presented for purposes of amending the constitution or the political landscape in their disfavor, and so on and so forth. That is definitely going to come. But I think, as Honorable Jeremiah Kioni says, eventually, when everything is said and done, most Kenyans are going to find that the proposals in BBI and the bills that will come out of them and the legislative measures that have been suggested, the policy amendments, the administrative restructures that have been suggested in BBI is something that is going to create a better nation for everyone. And so a lot more people than we probably imagine are going to run around BBI.
All right, that will wait to be seen. We're just about to say goodbye to you, Honorable Kioni, but before we do that, much as you have been, I think, quite polite in trying to suggest that this will not be a race against the Deputy President in any way, Pundits opine this really is the beginning of the Kenyatta succession contest, which certainly will be fought in many rounds. But BBI is going to be a big one if the deputy president is to stick to his guns that there is something nefarious about it and that Kenyans should not support it. In that respect, James has talked about the president explaining his position, and I believe he has on various occasions. Would you like to see the president go out and actively campaign for this BBI? Do you think it is not his place? He should just sort of present it to Kenyans, or rather, if I may put it more finely, who should be the face of BBI going forward? Is this Raila Odinga's political campaign to champion, or is it really the president's, as he has said, this is his legacy?
I think one of the things is I think it will be very difficult to think that the president will want to sit back and entrust this process to another person. When we had the 2010 constitution, Mwai Kibaki was at the forefront campaigning for that document, and he had to bring all others on board, including the prime minister then, so that the document was accepted by Kenya and it formed part of his legacy. I would expect that the president also takes an active role in explaining this document to the people. It is one of the things that is very dear to him. I believe it is something that he should not leave it out to other people. Others will be on. I know the former prime minister is there, and we hope that we'll see many more politicians joining that camp. But as my colleague has said, there is that the content of the bills, the content of any constitutional amendment that is put to the floor should also be able to drive, to have a momentum by itself. The benefit of what is being proposed might quickly convince even those who are a little bit worried about what is this whole document, this whole constitutional movement holds for them politically. And I would rather that we slow down. And let me say this, if also we were able to tame our political ambitions, there are those who would want to become governors, others want to become senators, others want to become X, Y, Z. If we were to tame those ambitions for a while, all of us, and look at this document, these proposed changes objectively, I believe that even the political climate thereafter will be better for all of us, and the outcome of 2022 will be an outcome that we'll all be happy about, and we'll be able to attract more resources into this country thereafter, even from the private sector. And that means that we release a little bit of the resources that we are using for infrastructure development, for example, to help us with the support of our social network. So I'm saying that the good, the eventual good, we should be able to sell the good. But I believe the president, the former prime minister, the whole of the team that have been before BBI, like we have had tonight, should come and tell us why is it that they are proposing these ideas, so they can carry us along. And we should also call the others to the table, those who are already a little negative. Call them to the table, let them see, and convince them that they should be part of it, not wishing them away, not issuing tough statements towards them, and vice versa. That is what this country needs.
All right. That's our time. I want to thank you, Honorable Kioni, for speaking to us, and James Mamboleo, constitutional lawyer, as well. We're back after this.